Sparks.
Back in the day, when radio was a thing, I grew up listening to Clinton Sparks. For me, he was just the epitome of cool. His catchphrase, "Get familiar," was how he introduced my generation to the hottest new hip-hop artists worth knowing. And growing up in the tough neighborhoods of Boston was how he gained his street cred. For Clinton, music was everything. He started his career as a rapper and gained a reputation as a producer with his own bootleg mixes that eventually snagged him a co-host seat at his local radio station. Even with the odds stacked against him, his charisma and tenacity turned that opportunity into so much more. Eventually, leading to worldwide syndication with Smash Time Radio, aka Get Familiar with Clinton Sparks. Today, he doesn't just host a radio show, he owns the radio station. He's an award-winning podcaster, a successful entrepreneur, author, and a Grammy-nominated producer. He's been recognized with just about every industry award under the sun for his work with artists like Lady Gaga, Pitbull, Ludacris, Akon, and so many more. I finally had the chance to meet Clinton in person at Aspire, the major entrepreneurial summit that makes tour stops in different cities each month. Aspire is the kind of place where backstage is a who's who, and that day, I snaked my way past names like A-Rod and several stars from Shark Tank to make my way over to Clinton. I had spotted him across the dimly lit green room and went over to somewhat sheepishly introduce myself. Remember, I grew up low-key idolizing him on the radio as a little hip-hop fanatic in the 90s. I figured I should say hi, even though he wouldn't know who I was, because I thought he might know my husband, George, who has had a decades-long career as a top music industry exec, specifically radio promo. And when I mentioned him, Clinton's jaw immediately dropped to the floor. He said, "No way! Hess is a legend!" I was immediately grateful to my hubby for giving me the cred. And from there, we were just homies, pure and simple. I knew I wanted to have him on the show, so with my hubby George in tow, we headed out to LA to conduct the interview at his home, which I assumed would be in one of the nearby neighborhoods like the Hollywood Hills or someplace in Calabasas, home of the Kardashians. But in typical Clinton Sparks style, it ended up being way cooler. When George and I, together with my videographer Rick, got to LA, we had to drive an hour outside of the city to Clinton's home, which felt like it was in some sort of a magical parallel universe. His neighborhood was ensconced in wide stretches of land, all farms and cool off the beaten path, big homes. We arrived right in the middle of one of his kids being sick, and it was really something else to see this cutting-edge DJ and nightlife god just being daddy at home. And what a home. While his wife took care of their toddler, Clinton took us on a tour. It was gorgeous and sprawling, with a 2-acre backyard, a massive pool, fire pit, pickleball court, and of course, a state-of-the-art music studio. For a sneak peek at our tour of this gorgeous property, check out our Instagram post at Gratitudeology. Imagine coming from the rough working-class neighborhoods of Boston, growing up bullied, enduring emotional and physical abuse. Back then, putting together whatever equipment you could to fashion up a little studio in your mother's basement, to eventually living amongst all of this. And the coolest thing, even with all the success and riches, Clinton is still the same down-to-earth kid whose scrappiness got him out of the hood and into the studio through gratitude, grit, and grace. So let's put on those headphones and listen up to the amazing soundtrack of a life. And let's get familiar with Clinton Sparks today on the Gratitudeology podcast.
Will you walk through the fire? Would you ride through the storm? Will you walk on a wire? Will you save me if I fall? Will you break through
Thank you for inviting me to your home.
Thank you.
I got to be honest. Your house
Thank you.
is sick. And it's like a dream.
I mean, that was the goal.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you don't buy a house to just like sit there and be like, I wish this was better. You work hard to get the things that you want to get. And I worked hard.
I don't know if you ever could have imagined when you were a kid
No,
that this would be
absolutely
your
not.
circumstance.
I'll tell you, when I gave you a tour of my property, when I took you to my pickleball court, the chain link fence that I have around, I don't know why, but when they were done putting it in, I actually cried because I own a chain link fence. I don't know what the significance of the chain link fence was, but it was just like, I was like, this is my fence. I'm super grateful for everything I have. There's not a morning I wake up and I don't look out at my property and look at my wife and kids and I'm just like, this is everything I wanted. I think people in their lives are searching for things to make them happy. And then when they get there, it didn't make them the happy that they wanted to be. And I knew exactly what would make me happy. And that was building the family that I always wished I had. And I built it and I won. So like, I'm not chasing happy anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like now my job is to defend happy.
That's one of the most profound things anyone said in the first 5 minutes of this podcast ever. And this would set the tone for what was about to be a very cool hour of inspiration with this very cool guy. But first, I knew I had to ask Clinton about the tough times. I knew we had to go back to the beginning. Your childhood was serious.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Sure. So grew up in Boston, Mass. We were broke, had roaches, welfare, like that kind of thing. My father was an alcoholic and left us. So my mother was left to raise me and my sister. Single mother working multiple jobs. So we didn't really have much. You wouldn't know that at Christmas time. She made it seem like we were rich. However, I was bullied. I was picked on. I never fit in. I always had like the uncool clothes. There's a lot of people that had that story. So that's partly why I don't really care about telling my story. It's like, woe was me, who cares? Everyone had a tough time, right?
Still, there's tough, and then there's tough.
Then I was molested for like 4 years in my home. When I became a teenager, there was a point that I was homeless. So, you don't know that these things suck when you're in the middle of them as a kid, because you haven't experienced life and you haven't experienced like the awesome side of life yet, or what could possibly be. And when everybody around you is kind of living in the same world, you're not like, well, I want to be like them, because social media wasn't around, so there's no one to compare yourself to. So you're just like, well, we all live like this. You don't think like, I want a better life, or this, is a shitty life. You realize that when you get older and your brain matures and you travel and you meet other people and you look back and you're like, wow, that was pretty significant, or some of the things I did. I would wonder like, what happened to that guy that made him need to do this to a little boy? I always listened, paid attention to what people felt, needed, didn't like. And plus, like, another big thing, when you're young and you go through these things and you know how you were made to feel, like unappreciated, unloved, that you don't matter, and you know that how much that makes you feel, shitty, then your job is to now make sure you don't do that to anybody else.
Yeah.
Right? Why would you be the reason somebody else feels the way that you don't like feeling? So that's kind of what I realized really early on too, like getting picked on and bullied. And I knew how I felt. I felt like a loser. I felt like nobody liked me. Then you go home and there's like, yeah, my mom did her job, like to make sure we ate and that we had a house and stuff, like, which is awesome. But there wasn't much like love in the sense of like support, or I love you and hug you and like you can do this and I got your back, and like there wasn't that, right? But you don't even realize that's something that exists or that you need until you get older. And you're like, wait a second, I don't even remember my mom saying I love you growing up. You know what I mean? So now you're so normalized to what dysfunctional love is that now that's all you know. So that's what you expect and what you keep doing, finding like your girlfriend or your wife or other people. And you live a life of, me in particular, I was so used to being okay that I went into things, even if I thought they were dangerous, knowing that I'll still just be okay, because that's how I built myself to be. So, I never really like looked at it like I need to be better. I need to treating myself better, or paying attention to who I'm around, or who I'm going to give my love to, or whose love I'm going to accept.
It's wild. But I mean, so I had read that when you were 12, you stole your first set of actual turntables and started making music.
Well, I was a lonely kid who didn't have any friends, who felt unloved. So the radio became my best friend.
Yeah.
So all I did was listen to the radio, and most people listen to music to like dance to or just sing along to. Like, it was educating me. I have a song actually called Radio that one time in an interview I said, everything I know I learned from my radio. And I was like, it's a fucking dope title.
Music is just, it's the foundation of everything for so many of us.
The soundtrack of your life.
It's the soundtrack
it's
of
the
your
thing
life.
that captures the moments. It's what remembers, it's the nostalgia that you can recall things that happened to you, good or bad. So like, I don't even know what life would be without music. It's like the most important thing that infiltrates every single facet of the world.
Yeah.
So if you understand what people need to feel, then you can make music for anybody. And that even goes for business. If you understand, you're never selling a product, you're never selling a service. You're always selling a feeling. That goes from musicians, it goes from entrepreneurs. If you understand the feeling that needs to be filled, if you understand what people need to feel, what they want to feel, you can sell anything to anybody.
But in making his own music, there was something else that made Clinton special. Of course, we all know that many hip-hop artists wear their battle scars proudly, like badges of honor, that somehow ending up in jail made them tough, gangster, legit. But Clinton wouldn't take that route.
So let me start by saying I was a criminal, and I used to rob houses and steal cars and stick people up and stuff when I was young. I'm not proud of it. I never bragged about it. Even when I was coming up in hip-hop, I never told anybody what I did, which I probably could have earned stripes by telling people like, nah, I used to do this. But I didn't, because I wasn't proud of it. And I also feared that some other lost kid would say, well, look what Clinton Sparks did, and he's okay. So I didn't want someone to know that I ended up, because I'm an anomaly from all that I've been through to then become okay in life. Now I'm totally not proud, and I feel like a piece of shit. You know, when you're trying to survive and you're just trying to figure life out, and then when you're a kid, you also don't understand consequences, right? I was around 19. Me and two of my friends were staking out a bank, and it was like a 2-week thing. And then the day before we were gonna rob it, my girlfriend at the time, her dad was the figure of like a man and a dad to me. So I really respected him. And I remember I stole some snowblowers and I stored them behind her garage or her shed. And her father found them. And she goes, my father found the snowblowers you put there. He said you're a loser. Nobody's ever called me a loser before that I cared about or that, you know, mattered to me. And it really hit me hard. So that was like a turning point in my life where I was like, I don't want to be a loser. So I looked in the back of the paper like we did back then, and UPS was hiring. And I got a job at UPS. And I told my friends, I'm not gonna rob that bank with you guys. I took my overachieving, workaholic, perfectionist personality and applied it to like now what I was looking at as my career. So I went to UPS. By the way, like my first company was like 12 years old. It was called Rent-A-Teen. My mom helped me do that. And what I would do is, I knew all the people in the neighborhood needed their cars washed or shoveled or their, you know, garbage taken out and shopping and clean their house. So I would gather up all the local teens and I'd go get all the jobs, then give it to them, and I'd take a nick off of everybody.
Love it.
So I didn't know that was entrepreneurship then. I'm just thinking, how do I make money? And because I also knew when I was robbing houses, I'd have so much money. There was times I paid my friend's mother's rent because I just had so much money. Yeah, so then when I got to UPS, I was so good at my job that anybody that works at UPS knows that, you know, the way the conveyor belts bring the packages down, then you load the trucks that then go out and deliver. Like veterans and real OGs would have like 3 trucks to load. Kind of rookies would get 1, and then media would get 2. They built a conveyor belt island for me with 6 trucks that I would also train new employees, because that's how hard I worked. To give another example, when I finally went full-time at UPS, which means you're now delivering the packages, I would always try to outdo my record every day. So I try to beat myself, and I've always only competed with myself. I'll give you a nugget. You should only compete with yourself, because when you compete with others, you're only aiming to be their best, which may never be as good as your best. Why am I trying to be like somebody that's maybe an asshole behind the scenes? So I just know I built the best me, and now I'm just trying to beat me every day. So when I'm in UPS, I'm delivering these packages, and after like a month of like trying to beat my record every day, I never even took like breaks. There was a park in South Boston where a bunch of the old timers would be there eating lunch. And I drove by one day thinking like, we're all buddies, we're brotherhood, it's the union, right? So I'm like, bam, bam, what's up, guys? I remember one took their sandwich. It's like, take a break, you fucking asshole. because the union, as you know, they work to make sure this is a 10-hour shift.
Right,
I'm getting it done in 7.5.
Right.
So now it's going to make UPS go back to the union, be like, hey, we need to renegotiate. This is on. So that's why they were getting mad at me. I ended up hurting my spine working at UPS. And I didn't graduate high school. I couldn't do hard labor anymore because I had a bunch of hard labor jobs as a teenager, as well as being a thief, sub shops, mattress discounters, like moving companies. I was like, oh shit, I can't do hard labor anymore. And I didn't even graduate high school. What the fuck am I going to do with my life? So the music thing that I've been doing as like a hobby, because back then, it was just like a dream. It's not like social media now where it's like, it seems like tomorrow I can be famous.
Right.
Back then, you're just like, you're doing it because it's your love. And you're like, I don't know anybody in the business. I don't have money. Like, how am I going to make this work? But yeah, so when I sat in my room and I said, I got to make this music thing happen. There's no plan B. And I did that and it worked out. Because I lived like 20 lives by the time I was 20, I understand so many different people and personalities and cultures and demographics. Like I was a white kid in a black neighborhood, but then I'd get sent to a white Irish Catholic school. And like my mom's friends were all like Puerto Ricans and black, and she had like gays and lesbians living with us. So like to me, I was introduced to everything like at the beginning of my life, which made me now, as I moved on in my life, care and consider everyone. Because to me, everyone mattered and we were all the same. So I didn't have to grow up and be like, I don't understand those people over there. Or why do they do that over there? Like so all the companies that I build, the songs that I make, like everything I've ever done, I think about how do I maximize touching as many people as possible, not for the sake of selling more, but actually impacting or providing value to more.
Tell me about that. I mean, this is obviously where I came to know of you. You got your radio job and you started getting notoriety. Like, how did that happen?
I was winning talent shows in Boston, and like I was always a dancer and a rapper and a producer. I never thought about I should be a DJ. Then I was producing for local artists. So like everybody in the scene in Boston knew Clinton Sparks. Mm-hmm. So then there was a popular DJ on Jammin' 94.5 back then. So I befriended him, and I was like, I'm gonna add value to him so that I can be a part of this and learn how this industry works. So I would go get drops from artists. I would do like intros for his mix show. Sometimes I'd even do mixes for him. And then I became so friendly with everybody at the company that I ended up becoming the guy on the morning show that did the funny skits. Right. I would do things like knock on people's doors the morning before Halloween and say like, hey man, I'm working tomorrow night. Can I just trick or treat now? Like I'd come up with like funny, or like I'm going to apply for a new job and I'd run around downtown, ask if I could borrow someone's tie so I could run into this thing and come back. Just dumb stuff like
Radio
that.
stuff.
Because I'm known in Boston, because now I'm coming up in the mixtape scene a little bit, the Cadillac Jack was the program director, was like, hey, how come you don't DJ for our station? I'm like, oh shit, this is it. I'm about to get on. And then the guy, like I was looking at him like my brother. And he was like, that moment he could have been like, yeah, done. You're on Saturday nights, 12 to 2. He could have did it, but he was like, well, let me look into some things. I was like, oh shit, he's straight blocking me right now. Mm-hmm. So then a new radio station was opening up in Boston called Hot 97. There was another program director, Tom Calicoci. So people were like calling me like, we need to have you on this station. Because like, why would you open a new station, not get like the dopest dude that everybody knows? Mm-hmm. So I go to my buddy, Roy. I say, hey man, I really want to be a part of this station. Like, you're my brother. I want to work with you. I want to do this stuff. I don't want to go anywhere else. Well, I'm trying. I'm working on it. They called me again. I'm like, yeah, just give me a couple more weeks. Third time, Tom calls me. And I'm like, just give me 24 hours. Now I go to this guy and I'm like, dude, I want to be on your team. I know you're nervous that I'm going to dethrone you, but don't. It would be advantageous for me to be next to you. I'll always look at you as the king. I'll actually make you better if I'm here with you next to you. And the line that came out of his mouth, which to this day shocks me, was, well, if you decide to do that, we'll always be friends. The reason it shocked me is because friendship, I realized throughout my life, means something very different to me than most people I've come across. And friendship wasn't even in question to me. Why would we not be friends anymore? But when he said that, I'm like, oh, you weren't really my friend. You were just utilizing the value that I can bring to you. And now if I'm going to go over there, I'm going to maybe become your enemy, which is bad for you because I'm going to fucking dominate you. By the way, before I got on that radio station, I asked him, what's this Sunday mix that's on that it's not you. What is it? It's a thing called Super Radio. And then I spent a year sending them demos. They wouldn't listen to me. So I found out they were in my state. So I drove to them and I said, look, guys, you're either going to find a winner without looking. If you give me 5 minutes, I'm just annoy the shit out of you until you listen to me. And then they gave me the 5 minutes. John Garabedian, the owner, calls me and he's like, hey man, I heard your stuff. We'd love to bring you on. Matter of fact, we don't even pay our DJs, but we're going to pay you. I was like, what? And I was like, hell yeah. So my very first radio gig was a 10-city syndicated radio show. Then I got on Hot 97.
Hot 97.
Then I was like, okay, I started understanding how the business of the music industry works. And I never, again, wanted to be a DJ. I was using this as a Trojan horse because I've always been a business person and a marketing person.
Yeah.
So I utilized like the music and radio to make the connections I needed to make. It just so happened that I became very successful as a DJ, which then pigeonholed me as a DJ for a while. But I noticed that, when they're doing promotions on an artist, they do regions. And you take them to Boston, and you take them to Rhode Island, and to Connecticut, to New York. I was like, oh shit, if I want to become friends with these artists, they just need to see me all the time. So then I went and I got on New York radio, I got on Connecticut radio, I got on Baltimore radio. By the way, all on my own dime. I was in 4 states on 4 different stations every single week, flying and driving on my own to build my brand and my network. Because as you know, you hang out with someone one time, oh, that's my boy. You hang out with them 3 times, you're fucking brothers.
Sure.
Like that. So, and I knew that. So I started hanging out with them. And now I'm a super value add because now it's advantageous for you to be my friend. Right. Because you have music to promote and I'm on 4 stations. I'm going to really break your shit. And I'm producing platinum records. And they all wanted to drop bombs and or sound as cool or cooler than the people they were interviewing. And I was like, so what's going to be my thing? At first, I need a handle. I need to brand myself. I was self-branding since 2000, like a decade before people were talking about
personal brands.
Everyone used to laugh at me, but I was like, Nike, just do it. Clinton Sparks, get familiar. So that's why I started with that. And then also my shtick on the radio was, I'm going to be an innocent white kid who doesn't know better. But I know I can get away with asking questions or poking in a way that a black dude in hip hop couldn't ask because it would cause problems, right? For example, if Jay-Z's on and I'm like, what do you do in your hotel room when you're by yourself, like after you're done touring? Like, what do you do? They're like, I play video games. I'm like, do you ever like watch adult feature films? And then he'll be like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're by yourself. You get lonely. Do you ever watch adult feature films? You know what I mean? He's like, why would I do that? I'm like, get familiar with yourself. You know what I mean? But I'd say it in a way like, what's wrong with that?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So I kind of became the cool / crazy white boy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That everybody just kind of liked because it was endearing the way I was asking. But then also, he's also super dope DJ and can produce.
Right.
So it was like non-threatening and disarming to talk to like the thuggiest rappers about like the corniest shit that I could get away with. So that's how I built my relationships with everybody.
So can we talk a little bit about, I know you produce songs with a lot of the records that are behind us right now. Gaga, Pitbull, Akon, Ludacris, 2 Chainz, Ty Dolla $ign, Lil Uzi Vert, Big Sean. I mean, you've been credited with, you discovered DJ Snake.
I discovered and signed DJ Snake.
Okay.
Yeah.
My listeners probably don't know what producing a song with somebody like that even looks like, sounds like. Are you in the same studio? Are you spending weeks together? Are you concepting? Are you doing it in pieces in your own home studio? What happens?
Well, it's different. You know, whether it's like writing a movie, making a song, all these industries. I mean, there's people that build companies together that don't even sit in the same office. They're on other sides of the country. So some people I'm in the studio, some people I'm sending beats. Some people will send me ideas, we finish them. Like, there's no set way on how you make a song. But when you call someone a music producer, that means they're either in there physically making the music or they're the maestro of putting everybody together. Getting the right songwriter, getting the right artist. Like DJ Khaled, for instance. He's like the king of producing records, but he doesn't necessarily tap out the beats and make the records.
Right.
He's a genius at understanding how to, the right ingredients to make the perfect recipe, like a chef. But then you'll have someone like Pharrell and Chad Hugo who are in the studio actually tapping out and making the music. So it's different, but traditionally it's the person that actually is making the music.
I mean, these people are so iconic. They're legends. And are there any fun stories about any of these people? Snake, Gaga. I mean, people love to hear stories about people like this.
So I don't know if Snake ever told this story, but so I signed him in 2007. By the way, we already had platinum records together. We already got a Grammy nomination together, but no one knew Snake yet. Mm-hmm. But he was successful. He was living the dream that most producers would want, but it still wasn't enough for him. So he was close to quitting. And I remember he called me one day, he's like, man, fuck this music shit. I'm sick of chasing records, trying to make hits for Flow Riders and Pitbulls, and they say no when we think it's a hit, the music industry is probably one of the most discouraging and beat you down industries there is, because you can make 1 million records and not place one, right? And all day, every day you're making records and you're like, this is a hit. If so-and-so did this record, 7 years later, nothing's happening. So I'm trying to encourage him, and so he goes, all right, I got this one record called Bird Machine, and I'm gonna go down to Ultra Winter Music Festival or whatever. And he goes, I'm gonna just go try to get the song to people. If nothing happens, I'm fucking done with this shit. And I'm trying to convince him not to. So he goes down and he runs into a guy named Dylan Francis in the lobby. And he gives Dylan Francis the CD, like, I got the beat, I got the song, the Bird Machine song, I'd like you to play it in your set. And so he gives it to him. The Bird Machine. Check. He ends up playing it on the set. It's a smash. Everyone loves it. Diplo's there, hears it, and then is like, dude, how do we put this out on my label? So that was the beginning of DJ Snake going like this, because Dylan played it, Diplo heard it, put it out, and now he's got credibility. But there's millions of those stories. I'm sure your husband has a million of them too, but I've been a part of so many stories where either I finessed it and made it work, or I played some kind of role in creating it in the first place. But the moral of that story is DJ Snake believed in himself. He was discouraged, and he's like, I'm gonna give it one last shot, and he did, and fucking changed his whole life. The guy sells out arenas, and tens of millions of records sold. So we've all probably seen that meme with his two guys chipping away at a mountain. Mm-hmm. One stops, the other one does one more chip, and there's diamonds, right? So it's that's life.
Yeah.
You keep going. Inevitably, it's going to work unless you straight suck.
And it's a story I've come to hear again and again, speaking with all these titans of industry. Whether it takes 5 or 10 years, is it as easy as it sounds? Hell no. It will suck. I can guarantee that. And it will keep sucking during those days and weeks and months when you keep thinking that any minute now, things will turn around. But the truth is, the only time you really lose is the minute you give up.
The problem is most people are chasing somebody else's audience, and they're comparing themselves to them. And they're like, I want to do it like him. I want their audience. Wait, I make the same kind of music as him. Why aren't I getting on the charts? Because there's so many variables that you don't know. Just make your plan on what you're trying to do and who you're trying to go after, and don't divert. Part of focusing on your plan is also not giving a shit about somebody else's plan.
Yeah.
And that's what most people trip up on, because they're comparing and they're looking around at whatever. When I was coming up as a DJ, so many DJs would follow what I did. I'd break the record, but then the more popular DJ on my station would get the credit from record labels and get the plaque, get the trip, get their beeper paid for, get all that stuff, right? Whatever it was. And people were like, aren't you mad? Why would I be mad? That's great for him. That's what he cares about. I don't.
Because whether he was aware of it or not, the reality was that Clinton was always going to succeed at whatever he tried to accomplish, because he was already deep in gratitude and practicing an entrepreneurial mindset. Music was his escape from that harsh life of his youth. But along the way, he was developing an understanding of being able to bring value to any kind of project he was working on. By the time I met him backstage at Aspire, which is aimed for entrepreneurs at all stages of the game to get together and learn from each other, Clinton was already encouraging people to push past the same obstacles he had faced so that they too could discover their own paths. And his secret sauce isn't that much of a secret, really. It's simply being a good listener and empathetic to whoever he is talking to, but he's also prepared to lead you towards a practical truth.
I still don't think I'm the best or better than anybody. You know what I mean? I'm also very open-minded and compromisable. Like, I'm not like my way or the highway. Like, I'm like, oh, that's a better idea than mine. I'm a very collaborative person, and I'm super interested in people and other people's ideas. Look, I already know how to sell to myself, right? Most people want to hang around like-minded people because they want their ideas and their thoughts endorsed, right, or co-signed. I was always someone that wanted to hang around people that don't think like me. I know how I think. I know how to sell to me. If I want to sell to you, a Jewish girl from New York, then I need to know how a Jewish girl from New York thinks, what bothers her, what goes on in her mind, what's her family like life, how does she treat her mother? Like, I need to know all these things. So I always was very attentive, and I always cared about listening and absorbing other people's issues, problems, things they have to say. The answers to everything in life are right in front of you if you just shut the fuck up and listen, right? But most people don't. And they're just like, they want to talk too much, or over talk someone that's giving you the answer, or listen to the wrong people for the answer, or keep trying to seek the answers to questions from people that they'll never get them from. Dad, why'd you leave me? Mom, why'd you do this? Da-da-da. They're probably broken too, or they don't know how to be accountable for the things that they did. So like, you're not going to get the answers that you need to feel the way you think you need to feel to be able to do the things you need to do, right? So I realized that very early. I was never going to like blame somebody else or hold on to something else. Like, even, you know, to my molestation as a kid, I use this example. If I broke my leg when I was 16, I'm not complaining about it at 36. It happened, it's over. What am I still talking about it for? So, you know, I think a lot of people hold on to trauma and issues, and because they haven't learned how to let go, or where it comes from, or why they do the things they do, they then turn those traumas. It's easier for them to, instead of just closing it out and moving on and realizing I don't need these answers, the answer is, what do I want to do in life? Where do I want to be in life? What makes me happy now in life? Those are the answers. That's all you need to know, right? You don't need to know why somebody did something dumb. They might not even know, right? So if you just focus on your life and what you want, you won't worry about those answers anymore. What really gets me excited is connecting people, connecting cultures, making people understand each other, myself understanding new people, a new perspective. Like, oh, that's interesting. I never heard anyone talk like that before. Now I put that into my arsenal of like understanding how to go back out to the world. And now I got a new personality, you know what I'm saying, or mentality that I understand that I didn't understand before. But yeah, the point I was going to say is the guy that molested me, like, when I look back and people say like, you know, how did you get over that? I get that a lot. Like, how'd you get over that? How do you deal with that? I'm honestly like, I don't even know why you're still thinking about it. The only person that should be thinking about that should be the guy that did it to me. Like, I took this little boy's innocence. I hope he's okay. You know what I mean? Like, that's what should be coming out of it. Not like, why did this happen to me? Dad, if you weren't there, this wouldn't have happened to me. Mom, why didn't you protect me? Or that's like, that it happened. It's over. So when I hear people talking about, I'm on this long journey to healing, to me, it's not a journey. To me, it's just a decision. A decision that only you can make. And by the way, I'm not knocking anybody that has their own way of figuring out how to, you know, get on stable ground. I've never needed therapy. I've never needed to do stuff like that. And by the way, even when I say things that sound like I really have it together, I'm okay, nothing problem, you still cry. It's a part of who you are. It made you who you are, so it lives in you. You can't, if you take it out of you, you take apart you, right? What you realize is that it's not your fault, how to manage it, how to not let it weigh you down, how to not let it be a problem, and for sure, don't make it a fucking excuse on why you like advance in life. Because if you're using it as an excuse, then really the excuse is you're just not dope at building a great you. And you're trying to blame someone else on why you don't have the ability or want to put in the work, time, or energy to build a better you. I built my life by design, not by circumstances. And if I lived by my circumstances, I'd fucking be a druggie or an alcoholic or a bad father or all these things. But I seen that shit sucks. that life sucks. People that do that don't have great stories about it. So why the fuck would I ever do that? So from the very early on, I listened to what do women like? What do they not like? What do I feel? What do people not like about employees? You know, you hear these things, you're like, oh, I got the answers. I know a woman doesn't like a guy that cheats, that treats her bad, that listens to her, da-da-da. There's the recipe to being a good man to my wife. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's right there. All the answers are right there. If you just shut the fuck up and listen, right?
I love it. I honestly can't think of a better place to end. That was like the most beautifully put, simple, like, it was perfect.
Well, to me, life is simple. People make it hard. What does the word gratitude mean? Or what?
How do you internalize it? Do you have a practice? Like, I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, okay? I say this all the time. Some of the richest people I know, and they're the most miserable motherfuckers I've ever met in my life. And it's so sad. It's such a waste.
Wait, that's really important you said that, because people think the thing that's going to make them happy is money. And you just said it yourself. You know rich people that are not happy. I know broke people that are fucking really happy.
Absolutely.
So like, that's what I mean by like, when you're architecting your life and you're building it by design, what is it that you know will make you happy? Not what you think. Because how bad is that if you spend 10 years chasing something you think will make
Smash time! Clean Sparks.
Back in the day, when radio was a thing, I grew up listening to Clinton Sparks. For me, he was just the epitome of cool. His catchphrase, "Get familiar," was how he introduced my generation to the hottest new hip-hop artist worth knowing. And growing up in the tough neighborhoods of Boston was how he gained his street cred. For Clinton, music was everything. He started his career as a rapper and gained a reputation as a producer with his own bootleg mixes that eventually snagged him a co-host seat at his local radio station. Even with the odds stacked against him, his charisma and tenacity turned that opportunity into so much more. Eventually, leading to worldwide syndication with Smash Time Radio, aka Get Familiar with Clinton Sparks. Today, he doesn't just host a radio show, he owns the radio station. He's an award-winning podcaster, a successful entrepreneur, author, and a Grammy-nominated producer. He's been recognized with just about every industry award under the sun for his work with artists like Lady Gaga, Pitbull, Ludacris, Akon, and so many more. I finally had the chance to meet Clinton in person at Aspire, the major entrepreneurial summit that makes tour stops in different cities each month. Aspire is the kind of place where backstage is a who's who, and that day, I snaked my way past names like A-Rod and several stars from Shark Tank to make my way over to Clinton. I had spotted him across the dimly lit green room and went over to somewhat sheepishly introduce myself. Remember, I grew up low-key idolizing him on the radio as a little hip-hop fanatic in the 90s. I figured I should say hi, even though he wouldn't know who I was, because I thought he might know my husband, George, who has had a decades-long career as a top music industry exec, specifically radio promo. And when I mentioned him, Clinton's jaw immediately dropped to the floor. He said, "No way! Hess is a legend!" I was immediately grateful to my hubby for giving me the cred. And from there, we were just homies, pure and simple. I knew I wanted to have him on the show, so with my hubby George in tow, we headed out to LA to conduct the interview at his home, which I assumed would be in one of the nearby neighborhoods like the Hollywood Hills or someplace in Calabasas, home of the Kardashians. But in typical Clinton Sparks style, it ended up being way cooler. When George and I, together with my videographer Rick, got to LA, we had to drive an hour outside of the city to Clinton's home, which felt like it was in some sort of a magical parallel universe. His neighborhood was ensconced in wide stretches of land, all farms and cool off the beaten path, big homes. We arrived right in the middle of one of his kids being sick, and it was really something else to see this cutting edge DJ and nightlife god just being daddy at home. And what a home. While his wife took care of their toddler, Clinton took us on a tour. It was gorgeous and sprawling, with a 2-acre backyard, a massive pool, fire pit, pickleball court, and of course, a state-of-the-art music studio. For a sneak peek at our tour of this gorgeous property, check out our Instagram post at Gratitudeology. Imagine coming from the rough working-class neighborhoods of Boston, growing up bullied, enduring emotional and physical abuse. Back then, putting together whatever equipment you could to fashion up a little studio in your mother's basement.